healthcare when you go see your provider instead of a one size fits all treatment. So we encourage the community to get involved so they can learn more about their self through genetics, their lifestyle, and their environment, and get an opportunity to learn about the ancestry report, how medicine works in your body, and any hereditary disease risk.
Yeah, thank you so much. And so we are definitely here to encourage people, our community, to get involved with this program. And for those that have been involved in the program, hopefully you've been able to log back in and just check and see what other surveys and things like that you might need. But if you don't, you can always make sure you call our office. And that phone number is, Taquanda?
Our office is 414-955-2689.
I am just I'm excited about today because we're going to have some special guests. And we have our very special guest starting us off with Dr. Kevin Izzard. Good morning to you, doctor.
Good morning, Karen.
How are you today?
I'm doing fine. I'm missing Michelle. Michelle, where are you? Is she like a cruise ship or something?
Oh, she's enjoying herself. No
Yeah.
wonder I was listening yesterday
she's
morning
listening.
too.
Hey,
Yeah.
Michelle, thank you for letting us borrow your hour. Your 2 hours.
On Friday.
Oh, that's right. She's not on Friday.
Yeah,
That's right.
we're actually getting an extra Friday today because you, the community, has told us and let the station know the importance of learning more about health. And so WNOV has said, hey, we need you all to come on another Friday to give us some more updates. And so we're going to have great conversation today. We have we have 3 doctors that are going to be joining us. And who are those 3 doctors, Dr. Izzard, besides you?
Oh, you're gonna make me say her name.
Because he had to, I'm just doing that to him because he corrected me before we started. So I'm going to take a dab at it, but we're going to let her say it when she, So,
Yes.
So what is her name? Dr.
Madeke.
Okay.
Yes.
Hugui Madukwe.
Madukwe.
Yes.
Madukwe. Dr. Madukwe. Is that right, Taquanda?
Yes.
And so I'm like, this sister has a very special name. And so she's going to provide some really interesting information to us. She's an oncologist, surgeon, so that's really saying something there. So we're going to have her. We're going to also have Dr. Jeff Whittle, who is the principal investigator for the All of Us Research Program. He's going to be talking more about research as well. So we're going to get this started. And just going to ask Dr. Izzard, when we start looking at, medical research, and what does that mean for the Black and Brown communities?
Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna tell you what my role is here. So I've been a guest, and I guess I'm still a guest, but
I don't know if you're a guest or you're just a part of this
I'm
platform.
becoming a regular.
He's already part of the platform.
Recurring characters.
I appreciate you being here because your wealth of knowledge really goes beyond what we can even do. So thank you for joining us every Friday when we're here.
Yeah. So yesterday I was up at the medical college. I finally signed an agreement to join all of us as a co-investigator. And it took a while because I mulled it over for a long time. And I was like, okay, what would my role be? What could I bring to this? And I mulled it over. It took a while. It wasn't because I didn't believe in the in the mission, because I really do. In fact, I believe that the mission is bigger than any of us. And my hope is that by actually signing on to become part of the team, that I don't lose any objectivity in our community's concerns about the research program. But I think to the college's credit, I think they realize that they have to have people of color involved in this to have any kind of credibility. And so, so I'm kind of leading I'm letting my credibility to this project. I really do, because above all, regardless of what's going on here, even before we talked about precision medicine and all of us, there was a concern within the medical community that we weren't represented in these studies. That we were putting medications out there, we were promoting protocols that didn't include us. And so I think, and that's my challenge, is to get people to understand that it has nothing. It's good that we have this, this research project going on, or at least this program to get people into research projects. But the whole idea is that we need to be demanding that we be in these studies, because a lot of these products that you see out there, medications, treatment protocols, are based on the response of healthy white men, to these things, and they may or may not reflect us. And so we need to be demanding that we be in these trials. We have to be.
I totally agree with that. And Dr. Izzard, when you were mentioning as far as how you had to really just um, analyze, I want to say that, and digest, if what type of role would you play. I kind of felt that way too when I started, or when I looked
Mhm.
at that position, because I know the challenges that our community, our people of color have had with research. And so
Hmm.
I wanted
Mhm.
to feel comfortable with that role, that the role that I'm playing right now and that I work with every day. And so I totally get what you're saying.
Hmm.
And but I also know that if we don't take a stance and try to help our community understand the importance of research,
Hmm.
who's going to do
Yes.
it for
That's
us?
right.
Yes.
That's right. That's right. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And
Mhm.
these products are going to, and these protocols are going to get out with us or without us. It's better that we be part of it, because that can only help us.
And that is so true. And for those that are listening that really do not know Dr. Kevin Izzard, I'm just going to give a few sentences about his bio, so that way you will really understand and know why he feels so important with how he wants to be represented in our communities and respected as well. So Dr. Kevin Izzard is a lifelong Milwaukee resident and a Medical College of Wisconsin alumnus. He is currently a family physician at Everside Hospital. He has worked as a practicing physician for more than 20 years. He is currently the president of Cream City Medical Society, the Wisconsin chapter of the National Medical Association. In addition, he is the chairman of the Department of Family Medicine at Ascension St. Joseph Hospital and formerly the co-investigator for the All of Us research program at the Medical College of Wisconsin. When do you sleep?
Amen.
Yes.
When do you sleep? That's what I want to know.
Oh boy,
How
yeah.
can you? I mean, this is remarkable, but just I wanted to share this with the community
Mhm.
because it really shows his dedication, his belief in, you know, proper health care, his belief in wanting to make sure that we are represented at the table.
Mhm.
And that's what we're doing today. We're at the table to have conversation,
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
have conversation about what's important with research. What are some of the things we are doing for our children? We're going to be getting into that with the Black Men White Coats today.
Mhm.
Also, what other research is going on in our communities across the country? What other historical Black college universities, what are they doing as well?
Yeah. You mentioned, why I'm so driven, well, with this is, I grew up in Milwaukee. I'm like I said, I'm a long time native. I went to Rufus King High School. I went to
Go Generals.
woo!
I went to Riverside. I grew up in this inner city community right here in the heart.
All right.
Go ahead,
I went to
Doctor.
Marquette for undergrad and medical college for medical school. And when I was a kid, there was a TV program. Some of you aren't old enough to remember this program, but it was a program called Marcus Welby, MD, and it was this doctor.
Yes, I
Yeah,
remember that. I
yeah,
love
Robert
that
Young. Yeah,
program.
it was Marcus Welby, and every week he'd come on and he'd have this patient with an issue or something, and they solve it in 90 minutes, in 60 minutes, and I said I want to be a doctor like that one day, and of course I had no idea what that really meant, because I had never even seen a black doctor, much less did I think I could really do it, but um, to my parents' credit, and when I said I would be a doctor, they kind of helped me to it, and I remember. I always had a love of science, so I remember running around the neighborhood and collecting spiders, and then going to the library and looking up. Yeah, the Tonka truck, yeah, with spiders. That Go to the library, look up what kind of spider it was, and then there was a time I found a fossil on the railroad tracks, and started looking at dinosaurs. But yeah, see, I was a kid. Now that's what science really is. It's just learning how the world works. And I remember making I must have been, boy, I must have been in third grade making a stethoscope out of some tubing and a funnel. But yeah, I got a microscope for Christmas one year. But anyway, so I was interested in science, and so that really drove me. And And so I always said that, if I became a doctor, I'm gonna serve my community, And so um, I grew up on Port Washington, Capitol Drive down here. I ended up practicing a mile and a half from where I grew up. So that did come true. But I look at this is not just a profession or a job. This is I feel this is my my mission. This is my ministry. This is what God has granted me with this gift, this gift to be able, or talent, or this ability to be able to intervene for people. And when I look at my role, if I look at my spiritual role, I think it's not necessarily position, but ambassador.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah,
Yes, yes.
because I think he's always called me to be in the middle of different groups and to try to bring them together. And so when I'm dealing with my patients, I'm an ambassador for them in the sense that I'm kind of connecting them, understanding the person that I'm dealing with, my patient, and advocating for them, and connecting them with the healthcare system, because it is very complicated, trying to get through the system. And so I look at my role as ambassador, and even with all of us, as I was thinking about this last night, I said, okay, this is, again, I'm an ambassador now, for all of us. I'm coming from one group and presenting the information to another group and trying to get them to come together.
And I appreciate that, because that's been some of my challenges as being the program director, is trying to bring people together. And, it's really good when the community can see that the people that they can trust and that they know are a part of this program.
Hmm.
I mean, of course, the National Institute of Health is it's a federal program,
Hmm.
but yet and still, we know that as the community, we also are able to make it work for our community as well by us being a part of this.
Hmm.
And so we're going to talk a lot today about how we've been a part of the health community, how all of us research has been there, how the Medical College of Wisconsin has been there. And we're going to be able to just kind of move forward
Hmm.
as we go through this today.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, Dr. Izzard, I know last time, I'm just thinking about the last couple times that you were here joining us. We had some wonderful conversation
Hmm.
about diabetes. We had conversations about mental health. People were calling in, and, people have also said to me, like, I want more. I need to hear more about those topic
Hmm.
areas, because,
Hmm.
people sometimes when they go to the doctor, they really don't feel comfortable with that doctor.
No.
And so, Dr. Izzard, I wanted to ask you, like, what can people do to feel more comfortable with their doctor? Because I feel like when I go there, I'm interviewing you just like you're interviewing
Hmm.
me, in a sense. I
Hmm.
want to see what your beliefs are, how you treat people, what are your responses?
Yeah. Yeah. So we're gonna hear a little bit later about the black men in white coats. It was an event that happened this past weekend, and the idea was try to get kids interested in science, and the reason why that's important. I had someone call me as president of Cream City. My number is on the website, so someone called me. I had this call actually during the day. I was at work, and it was sounded like an older lady was asking. I got a heart problems, and I'm looking for a black cardiologist. Who can you tell me? And so I knew there's a cardiologist over at Freighter, um, Dr. Ivor Benjamin. And actually, he's very well renowned, and he's another one doing a lot of research. And in fact, he's kind of coming out of his practice, seeing patients and doing more research and running the institute over there. But so I said, okay, let me get your number. I'll get back to you. And I started finding out who's in town. There were, other than him, I think there's another cardiologist over at Aurora. But the other one, there was another one in Racine area, and another one in the Green Bay area. So there's not a lot of black cardiologists, not a lot of black surgeons, not a lot of black family doctors. I mean, there's a handful of us, and so we realized that if we're gonna fix this thing, because this lady went on and explained why she was looking for a black cardiologist. She said, the doctors I go to, they don't understand me, they don't listen to me, and that's a common thing you hear people saying. They don't listen to me. Um, and if you can't communicate with your doctor, if they don't have enough time for you, or they don't understand you, or they're making assumptions about you, and they're not working with you, well, then that's an obstacle. You can't get your health issue fixed. If you can't identify and communicate to the doctor what's going on. And so we realized that to really fix this thing, we got to make more doctors because this isn't something that starts as you're graduating from college, and going to and apply to medical school. You got to start early. Like I said, I was a kid, and I had that love of science, and it was um, um, developed over the years, and so I had to take when I was in high school, I had to take biology, and I had to take physics, and I had to take chemistry. A lot of our kids are taking earth science. Well, that's earth science is good that that you appreciate how that works, but that's not going to get you into medical school. You got to start preparing for this stuff. And so the whole idea, we get these kids and we catch them early, we can and talk and get their parents involved because a lot of times, because most of the time the kids don't have any say as to what classes they take. Their counselor sits down with them, and they make their schedule for them. But you got to have a parent that's involved, that's making sure their kids are getting the right classes, and that we got there's tons of programs over the medical college for like summer programs for kids, and a lot of times they kind of even go unfilled sometimes because the kids don't know about it. The counselors don't know about the programs. And so I remember we had this program where we had this young man. 'Cause we don't have. That's the other thing. That boys are really underrepresented in these programs. So we had one with a young man. He was very promising. We got into the program, the AIM program, and then he called back and said, "Well, I can't do the program because I'll make more money working at the airport." And he's completely missing the whole point of this is a way to get your foot in the door. And people that know that white kids, their parents are paying for them to do this kind of stuff. He was getting would have gotten a stipend, but he'd make more money at the airport.
So I think that's what we definitely have to do is make sure the parents really support our children. This is Karen Dodson from the All of Us Research Program, and you're joining us with WNOV 860 and 106.5 FM. We're going to be right back. Please feel free to give us a call. And if you have questions, if you want to just talk to us this morning, you can call us at 414-444-5250. We'll see you back on the other side. with you about health and also about why it's so important for you to know how and what you should do when you're going to the doctor, questions that you might have. And I have a caller on the line. So good morning, caller. Thanks for joining us at the table.
Morning, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm okay. I have a question, and probably a comment too. I can remember what happened to our black doctors. I can remember there were slews of them. I'm
Mm,
somewhat of an old schooler, and I could name you about 15 or 20 black doctors. And once
mm-hmm.
they left, it's like dinosaurs. They're all gone and no more
Yeah.
doctors, black doctors. Okay, now do you think perhaps that the educational uh, system is kind of deterring our black youth from pursuing the medical field? Like a lot of times they'll tell them, "Oh, you're good for this, you're good for that," and
Mm-hmm.
when in fact they might have a medical uh, career in mind.
Yeah. Yeah. So your answer is yes. I remember when I first started, when I was a medical student, um, and I came to medical college. I met with Dr. William Walker. I don't know if you remember Dr. Walker. He
Of
has since
course, I
passed.
do.
Yep. William Walker took me under his wing and he said, "Son, you want to do this?" He said, "I want you to go." I spent a month with him in his office. And he said, "Okay, I want you to tell me how much money you want to make." Okay, so now I'll I want you to look up, go to Medicaid, and I want you to see, tell me what's the reimbursement for seeing a visit. Okay. Figure out how many visits you need to see every year to make the money that you want to make. And so, um, he was really funny guy. He's got some stories too. But Dr. Pruitt, another person I met, Gene Pruitt, told me about, why, because I wanted to find out why they're doing this and how they're doing it. So, Dr. Pruitt, uh, um, Dr. Well, I'm blanking now. Dr. Lovesey.
Yes.
There were,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Dr. Lorenzen, Dr. James, Janine James. There were all these people that were kind of my heroes when I came in. Laurie Thomas.
Mm.
Um, and so they kind of, helped me. And I remember talking with Wayman Parker, and he was saying, okay, at this time, boy, he was younger than I am right now. He said, I'm looking at retiring in a few years, and I'm asking myself, who's going to replace me? And so I need you to do that. And so, especially being homegrown and being one of the few people, because even the people that doctors that are here, most of them are from Chicago and from somewhere
Mhm.
else. And so, it's very rare that you find somebody who's homegrown and who's staying here. And so now here I am at that point, like him, and I'm like, okay, who's gonna replace me? You commit yourself to making changes in the community, and so yeah, so it is a big problem with the reason why I get it. It's hard. Science is hard. And you look at what's going on with MPS. It's hard enough to get kids to be able to read and write and do general math, much less do physics and advanced chemistry so you got to really find the right kids and you got to nurture them and you got to follow them. Again, it's not nothing that you can do. This isn't a 2 year commitment. This is a commitment over a whole career. Starting from elementary through middle school, through high school, through college, through medical school. I mean, it takes a long time to create a doctor. You think about to add up all those years, and then you add another, residency onto that before you actually produce a doctor. So it's a huge commitment and investment in these kids. But yeah, you gotta let kids know that they can do, if they're really interested, they can do this. But you got to help them through it because they will get discouraged. And a lot of times the counselors don't think they can do it, or people don't believe in it, or they're getting pressure from their peers saying, "Oh, you smart. You think you smart. You try to be white." And so they get
Oh boy.
discouraged. So we again when Dr. Madekwe comes in, we'll talk more about Madukwe, why black men and white coats are so important. But
That's
Yes.
go ahead.
that's that's very true. Now, for me, now I go to Freighter and I got everything that that's wrong with me under the same roof.
Amen.
And but then when I go, now I had a very nice doctor. They all treat me well, but the thing of it is, my doctor my primary doctor told me, she says, always, he says, I would like to spend time with you, but they only allow us 20 minutes per patient. And I said, oh my God, what
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
20?
true.
I could not tell you nothing in 20 minutes. And then half the time I forget what I'm going to ask them by the time I get there, unless I write it down. So I said, 20 minutes? 20 minutes?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's key.
20
What you
minutes
just said. Yeah,
Yeah.
what you just said is
Yeah.
key.
Yeah.
Writing
I
it down, writing down your questions before you
Yeah.
come in, because there are limitations as far as the cost of healthcare, and it's so
Yeah.
expensive, and that's why there's limitations with time. But a lot of times, if you write it down, your doctor will then be able to answer those questions for you.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, you can still, they have like nurses that assist with you. And they maybe can answer questions if you need some additional time. So I would say definitely if it's rushing you too much, just kind of let your doctor know
Right.
that you're uncomfortable with that. Dr. Izzard?
You really do have to either be intentional when you come in, so you got to be on a mission. Okay. This is these are the 3 points I want to get through. They might not get through one or two of them, but at least these are the 3 points. And you know that I'm going to come back and talk about this third thing. And, um, unfortunately that, what Karen was saying is very true. The number of visits is driving healthcare. And so you have 15, 20 minutes, and even that 15 and 20 minutes is not all with the doctor. Most of it's probably with, their medical assistant. They come in, the doctor might only meet you for 5 minutes and they shake your hand. How you doing? Okay. You need a refill. Okay. We'll see you, in 3 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
You sound like
I
a
know, I know.
doctor.
So much.
Yeah.
Hang up, let
Yeah.
someone else get through.
The other thing is that I was just thinking, and I, did a little research to see exactly like what is the percentage of, black physicians in the country, and it's around 5.7%, and that's very low. When you start thinking about it, so that's under 6. So every 100 doctors that you have, you're going to have maybe any 5 to 6 Black African American doctors as well. So, that's some of the challenges that we kind of go through too. So, when I was listening to Dr. Izzard, and he mentioned as far as what he was doing, but his parents were also supportive of him. And that's key, because I remember I have a sister that's a neurologist, and when I was growing up with her, she had a biology set, she had a chemistry set. She was mixing all kinds of stuff together and trying to make it smoke or whatever, doing interesting chemistry stuff, But my mother and my father, they realized that, so they were supportive of her role. And so they gave her the tools to really get her more interested in doing it. And that's what I heard with you as well. So I know you want to have those different teachers and instructors help you, but it's also how do we work with our children?
Dr. Izzard, I just had a quick question. I have an uncle who's a doctor. Of course, went to the University of Wisconsin Medical, Dr. Derwin Gray. He chose to move away. Do we see a lot of that, whereas they get the schooling and they do not stay within the community? And service the community?
Yeah, that's a whole nother issue, because what ends up happening, especially for those who are rabble rousers, put that in quotations, back in the day,
you know my uncle or something?
yeah, right. See, back in the day when I first started, there were a number of Black doctors who were still in private practice. Okay. So they didn't want to work for the big healthcare system. They didn't want to work for Aurora or Ascension or Pro Health. And so they were doing their own thing. And they burned themselves out, so either they died young like Dr. Lubsey or Dr. Walker, because they had heart attacks and couldn't take care of their own selves. Or they caused enough problems that they had to leave town, because now if you work for the big healthcare system, you sign what's called a non-compete agreement. So in your contract, it says that you can't practice for the competition. Okay. You can't practice anywhere within a 10-mile radius of where you are. Well, in Milwaukee, 10 miles takes you out of the city. Okay. And so you're either going to practice in the suburbs, and some of them have contracts that say you can't practice at within 10 miles of any of our other clinics. So, if you can't practice within 10 miles of any Aurora clinic or facility, you can't practice in Milwaukee anymore. So basically you got to leave town. And so it happened to a lot of people that they end up leaving town because they had these non-compete clauses that have really kind of pushed them out of the city. The other thing too is that, I love Milwaukee. It's my home, but Milwaukee's got some issues, you know, and so it's not a favorable place to raise a black boy, or um, so a lot of times people find that that the pasture's greener, in Chicago or Atlanta or some other
Yeah.
place. So, people do end up leaving.
Yeah, they leave, but also sometimes they come back. Because I was
Mhm.
just looking at my sister. She was here working and practicing, but she went to Mayo Clinic and worked, and she went to other locations, Ohio, and worked. But then she came back here before she retired. So, and that's another thing. They burn us, doctors are
Mhm.
burned out. So they just like, I'm tired. I want a life,
Yeah.
and so sometimes they choose to do that, earlier than most. And they start doing other things they enjoy doing because it's really, I would say, a commitment that
Mm.
really, with Dr. Izzard, I know that he's committed, and I'm just like, when do you sleep? So,
Mhm.
the commitment is really great too
Right.
when it comes to physicians, and
Right.
so
Especially black, because a lot of black physicians, patients expect that you're going to have their back.
Yeah.
So it's not just
I know,
it's not
right?
just saying like you as a white doctor is okay. I mean, you're going to take care of my healthcare needs. When black patients see you, they think you're gonna help me with my transportation. You're gonna help me get a bus pass. You're gonna help
Yeah.
me, with afford my medication, and so there's a whole other layer, of expectations for us when it comes to dealing with our people.
Taquanda, you're over there pretty quiet today, and so she has a biology degree, and she's in nursing school right now. So,
Yes.
what's your comment as far as what you experience with this?
Well, it's kind of the same for me as I'm wrapping up the semester in nursing school. Um, Again, it's probably like five of us brown people in the
Mm,
whole cohort.
mm,
So it's like in the beginning, it was a strong 10, but now that it's the end of the semester, it's like five of us.
mm,
So
Wow.
it's
mhm,
really shocking and surprising because when you get to those challenging classes like pathophysiology and pharmacology, that's where people like, oh, that's it. I'm throwing in the towel. I can't do it.
mhm,
So I'm just looking at my fellow students. I'm like, well, I can't give up too. I was like, I have a commitment to my community with my community engagement background as well as my biology background. I want to be that voice and be able to translate that information that I learned in class and to be able to speak the same language as my community and educate them and let them know, like, yeah, sometimes these things are hard, sometimes it's scary, but
mhm.
I'm willing to put in the work to make sure I help someone else.
Yeah. You know what scares me though,
What's
Karen?
that?
Um, Back when one of the things that got me really convinced me that I could be a doctor, because I said I never even met a black doctor. Laurie Thomas was the first black doctor I met, and I was in college at that time in Marquette. But anyway, what scares me is that like there was a summer program my counselor, Laverne Jackson Harvey, convinced me to go into at Harvard. Now I don't know what I was thinking. I don't think I can go to Harvard for the summer program, but there were 89 people in this program, all black, black and Hispanic from around the country, tops in their schools, and here I was, little old me, and and it inspired me. It really inspired me. I came back, I was on fire, But what scares me is that these programs are going away because
Mhm.
again, I needed some extra help to first of all to help me to believe I could do it, but then this to help me with any kind of not having a doctor in the family. I didn't know, and my parents didn't go to college, so we didn't know how do you make this happen. So a lot of these programs are there to help parents to maneuver that, and they used to call it affirmative action at that time, and now it's diversity and inclusion. All this stuff
Mhm.
is going away. I mean, it's
Yes.
it's it's being literally being snuffed out, and instead of us having more programs like that to get kids up to speed and to get into these professions, there's going to be fewer of these programs.
And I
Mhm.
think that's why it's so important that you let the people that represent you in Congress, let them know about the importance of what you need for your family, for your community,
Hmm.
because we need to have those resources. And a lot of times it's based on federal dollars. And so if the politicians don't really understand what's important, they're there to represent you. And
Hmm.
so we need to make sure that we understand and know and get the word out. That's something that even with the All of Us Research Program, letting those individuals know the importance of research, letting them know the importance of educational institutions getting that support from diversity and inclusion that you mentioned. those things are very important. And that's the purpose of having those programs, to make sure that we're at the table, that we're
Right.
doing some of the work.
Right.
And so that's, really key. I know the medical college have quite a few programs to really support teens and students to get them to levels of being ready. And so, you can call the institution and find out more about that. They have summer programs and things of that nature to get people involved. But parents, you have to take a voice. You have to take a stand
Mm-hmm.
to work with your children as well, because it is hard. It's very hard. And so that's the challenge, because I think sometimes the newer generation feel like, I don't think I want to spend that much time in my life. And so that's some of the challenges that we have. But also, find someone. See, Dr. Izzard says something very key. He actually went and found people he could talk to give him some direction, to allow for him to be able to know, like, okay, this is what I need to do. This is how it might go. And so getting that direction from somebody that has made it already and shared, and they're sharing that information with you, is really key.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just thinking, like, what else? Like, Dr. Izzard, we
Mhm.
kind of talked about, like, people going in to have conversation
Yeah.
with their doctor.
Yeah.
What are some of the basic questions that people might want to ask their doctor about their health?
Yeah. So, like the one thing I said, probably the biggest thing is have an agenda when you go in. So have an idea of what you want to talk about, because a lot of times people can be wordy. If you're one of these people that really is wordy, you really even more so have to write it down, because there's, you have even less time, to explain what's going on. And a lot of times we don't have the vocabulary either. Someone says, well, I got a pain. Okay. Pain can mean anything from burning to aching to sharp to crampy. So you gotta have the kind of vocabulary that explains best you can, what your issue is. And then I said, well, how long has it been going on? Oh, it's been going on a minute. We are very apt to say it's been on a minute. What does that mean? A minute, does that mean
A day, 2
yeah,
days,
right,
a
a
month,
month, a
2
week,
weeks?
yeah, right. So for some people, a minute can mean 10 years. And so and now me being black, I know a minute. I know that's it's a phrase, but for a lot of white people, they don't understand what you're talking about. You say it's been on a minute. So you got to have to try to explain as best you can in the shortest period of time as possible. But also ask questions. I've had people come in and tell me they've had surgery, and they can't exactly tell me what the surgery was or even why they had it, and they can't remember the surgeon's name. So they let somebody cut something out of them, and they don't know who did it and why. So you need to keep records. Keep a file somewhere where you have what procedure you had done and where and why they did it, as best you understand it. If you don't understand it, make them explain it to you. Most doctors, if they don't do it, at least they'll have their medical assistant or the nurse can give you information. Can you give me something about what do you think this is? I don't understand that word, and then have somebody explain it to you later or read about it yourself. But make sure you understand, what it is they're doing, and get information if you need to. And then ask about medications, because a lot of times you'll see a specialist, especially, and they might not have all your medications. They might not have known that you went to the cardiologist last month and they changed your medication. Now you're taking this, and you see this other doctor, and they give you something, and it may interact. So you have to. Ideally, if you have a lot of medications, you should have a list, and you're keeping your wallet or your purse, of your medications, so that you can show somebody and say, because you can't pronounce most of these names, So this is my list of medications. These are the 8 medications I'm on, and that way they can make sure that things aren't going to interact with each other.
And that's interesting, because sometimes if you don't, like, write them down, just bring the prescription with you.
Yep,
Yes.
bring the bottles
Bring
with
the
you.
bottle,
Yep.
bring the package with you. Just
Yep.
walk in there and say, this is, and so then they know exactly what you're taking, how often you're taking it as
Yep.
well.
Yep. And the last thing is, make sure you have the right to a second opinion. If someone says something and it doesn't make sense to you, or you're uncomfortable with it, you can always ask for a second opinion.
That's really key, because sometimes we need that before you go in and get some major treatments or procedures done. You want to make sure, like, am I doing the right thing? And sometimes I know when I've had to have things happen, I'm like, okay, I guess you go so long that you say, okay, I guess I got to go get this sinus surgery done right now
Mhm.
because I just can't breathe through my nose. It's
Right.
just that bad now. So I got to
Mhm.
go in.
Mhm.
But, sometimes we kind of wait until the point that we are just really struggling. And then I was like, it wasn't so bad. I should have did this maybe a year ago. And so having that confidence of talking to someone and getting second, opinions about your health is really key as well. But I think that as we continue to go through this process of learning what's important with our health, what we need to do with our health, and how we communicate and be supportive of each other is really key. So, Dr. Izzard, do you have anything else you want to comment on this before we get ready to take a break?
Yep. Okay. No, yeah, I think that these questions we talked about. I hope people, take. Oh, one other thing I should probably add to that too is, um, everybody should have a primary care doctor, primary care provider. I'm not going to say necessarily doctor because you might have a nurse practitioner that you work with or a physician assistant, but you should have a primary care person because a lot of times we get into these emergencies or urgent issues, and for one, you can't get in. And it's hard to get into some place if you don't have already your foot in the door. They don't know who you are. You're a new patient. It may take you a long time. It may take you a month to get in to see somebody as a new patient versus an established patient. They can get you in a lot of times for an urgent issue. Plus, you got people I got people that come in, they got pain. Okay. And you go to urgent care or you go to the emergency room, nobody wants to give anybody pain medication anymore with this whole
No.
opioid crisis. And so people are suffering because I went to the ER, they wouldn't give me any medication. Well, they don't know you. They don't know what you're going to do with the medication. They don't trust you. So if you have a primary care doctor or a primary care provider, hopefully that person knows you, and they know, well, one, they know what medications you're taking. They know your sensitivities of things. And, they know whether, you're trustworthy with the medication or not. So, you should really have a primary care provider, and that person hopefully will have your record. So they know who that surgeon was and what they did to you, and why. And so you have a record, you have a paper trail where you can follow things because you got one person who's keeping everything in one place.
I like that because I always look at it that the primary care physician is the individual, the professional that looks at and makes sure that your care is really what it should be. Because sometimes the primary care physician will talk to the different specialists
Mm-hmm.
to be an advocate for you as
Mm-hmm.
well,
Mm-hmm.
to ensure that you're getting the treatment that you need. And so the specialists that you go to a lot of times don't know all that history.
That's
And
right.
so that's why it's really key. Like when you go to those specialists, always make sure, like, did my primary care doctor see this?
Mm-hmm.
Make sure it's in that in your file. And also you can ask for a copy because some people really
Right.
they're not savvy on getting onto the computer and looking at their electronic health record information.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can always ask for a copy and keep your file for yourself as well.
One of the most humbling things that happens is I'll send a patient to a specialist because they got this really complicated problem, and they'll come back to me. Patient will come back to me and they said, "Well, Doctor such and such said that I should do this. What do you think?" So they trust my opinion as much as they trust a specialist.
Right.
And so
Right.
so it's good to have somebody who's in the healthcare system who can help you with that. Even little things like I have patients who come in, and I know that their insurance is going to their insurance renews at January 1st, and so they might need to have a procedure done. And now it's November. Well, I might advise them get this done before December 31st, because if you do it, your deductible has been met this year already, and it's not going to cost you anything. If you get it in January, it resets, and now you got to pay already.
Exactly.
So there's little things you can do kind of help people to get through the system. Or I might call they can't get in. I'll call the specialist myself and say, look, this is Dr. Izzard. I'm really concerned about this patient. Can you get them in? And almost invariably, they'll figure out something. They'll put them on a list, for if someone cancels, or they'll do it like outside their office hours or whatever, or they might tell me, well, have the person get this and then have them come in and see me after they get the MRI. So it's good to have someone on your team who's working for you.
Yeah, so that's really key. And I think that that's one thing that we want to make sure that we talk to our primary care physicians. We go in on an annual basis. We have a caller. Um, Thank you for joining us at the table this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for taking my call. And I'm glad that Dr. Izzy mentioned about a primary doctor. I have a primary doctor that knows all the medications that I take. And they do tell you bring all your medication in so that they keep a record of it.
Mm-hmm.
Every procedure that I've had, every surgery that I've had, I mention it. And then just with the Aurora system, when you're on your way out the office, they give you a report of
Mm-hmm.
what happens that day that you're discussing what's going on with you, or if you had a flu shot, or if you did this, or you did all that's in that report.
Yeah.
And it makes a difference.
It really
And
does.
I'm gonna tell you, when I go into my doctor, sometimes I get a little annoyed because I have glaucoma, and he is so busy, and you have to wait sometimes because if you had surgery the day before, they put those ahead of the people so that they could look at them and go on, and you have to wait. I used to get so annoyed until I had to have surgery, and then I didn't get those people that were sitting waiting like I used to have to wait.
Mm-hmm.
And I got an appreciation for when I did get the opportunity to go in there, I wasn't rushed. He took his time, answered the questions that I needed. And it's such a good feeling. And no, you don't have that many Black doctors. But if you go in there, you have to advocate for yourself.
Yes.
But you don't go in there telling the doctor what to do.
Right.
Or have a family member go in there being all rude and disrespectful to a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get, you have to use honey and not vinegar.
That's
Honey,
very
not
true.
vinegar. I love that. Yes.
Yeah, a lot of people walking around their lips all puckered because they're sucking on lemons, And so, yeah, you're right. You're not gonna get much done that way. But the other thing
really
too.
Appreciate you doing what you do and coming on to our community and letting us know what's going on and advising us that when you same thing. It was something on the radio yesterday dealing with. Oh, that's talk to the lawyer about Columbia
Mm-hmm.
Neighborhood,
Carol
where
Pless,
you go in and you say, okay, I'm in Medicare and I wanna be taken care of in my home. If you do that and you sign your house over to someone and say and then you already have a will saying all my things are going to my children, well, that's going to take precedence over that, and that house is going to go to Medicare because you signed it over to them.
Mm-hmm.
So my thing is to tell people, if you can trust your children while you're feeling well, take care of that business. Put it in their name because you have to be feeling pretty good and in your right state of mind 7 years before you get into whatever. Now, this is your home. They can't jump in and get it now.
Mm-hmm.
They should have did this before. Look at these records. Take care of that business. So when they say you want it to be taken care of in your home, you can be. And they won't be taking it because it does belong to your children.
Okay.
And you're just renting from them.
Yes.
Yeah.
So these are the kind of things that we're talking about: wills and trusts and power with medical directives. All these things are critically important to have in place. Thank you so much for listening.
Amen. Thank you for your
for
comments.
calling.
And one other comment you made that was really important was a lot of our people aren't tech savvy, but I can tell you if you're older, your grandkids or your kids, especially maybe even your great grandkids know how to do this stuff. Most of these places now, especially the big hospital systems, will have a patient portal or a my chart, or they call it different things. But it's you can log in. So there's an app for your phone, and you can log in usually to your provider, and you can see those what your medications are, what your diagnoses are. They'll ask vital signs. You can find that stuff.
Right.
It's online. You can get it.
And so I look out there online and I can tell what appointments are coming up and all that good stuff. And like you said, my grandkids, oh my God, they are such a huge help.
Well, thank you for.
But they're all out of town now.
Yes.
And
thank you for.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for taking my call.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, we have one more caller before we go to break that we want to take. Hello, caller. You're on the line. Welcome to Sitting at the Table with us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for taking my call. And Dr. Izzy, I really wanted to ask too, Dr. Izzy, do we have any Black urologists? My son needs to see a urologist. He has an awesome doctor, and I'm sure you know his doctor. Oh my God, he's an awesome black doctor. But my son needs to see a urologist.
Mm-hmm.
And when I try to find one or go online to try to find one, I can't find one.
Yeah, yeah. That that's one of the things that we're doing with Cream City Medical Society is we used to have a list of black doctors and specialists. We don't have that much. We don't have that anymore. So we're trying to get that instituted again because you're right. If you want to see, a black doctor in a certain specialty, it's hard. So unless you know somebody, I think Merle Orr is a urologist, isn't he?
I don't know.
He's over at Freighter. I think he's at Freighter.
We can look and see.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we can
We'll
find
we'll
out.
look it up
Yeah,
and
you
we'll
call.
see and we'll let you know. We'll let you
Oh
know.
my goodness, thank you so very
Okay,
much.
we'll make sure. So just keep listening
Great
and we'll
show
check it out for
today.
you.
Great show today. Thank you.
Thank you for calling. This is Karen Dodson. You sitting at the table today. We've been having some great conversation. Um, and it's been a joy to just hear you ask questions and call in, and we welcome that. We'll be back. If you have questions, you can call us at 414-444-5250, and we'll see you on the other side of the break. Every time we hear the music and we're in this love together, we got the kind that lasts forever. Did I say it right? Or Gilbert Crompton?
Gilbert Crampton.
Okay, Crampton, and also Dr. Kevin Izzard. And you are listening and talking and joining us at the table. This is where we have community conversation. So I wanted to we have a couple callers on the line. So I want to get to the next caller if you have a question. Good morning, and thanks for sitting at the table with us.
Okay, thanks for being there.
Good morning.
But morning, everybody.
Good
So
morning.
I was listening, and you were speaking about medical conditions and doctors and stuff. So like I say, I'm an older woman, and I started real early in life, visiting doctors. But and now, like I say, I feel like all of it's an assembly line, in and out, and which I don't really have a lot to say when I go there. But I do have conditions because I'm 74.
Mm-hmm.
But doesn't bother me. But what I have learned that a lot of times you have to start reading and understanding, things in the medical field because to me they don't talk a lot either. And so you have to start reading yourself because, like, for instance, like my mom, she was having a stroke and they kept sending her home. And so I in myself felt that's what it was because she would stop talking to you, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But we kept taking her to the hospital, but I do plaque the symptoms on my refrigerator and the heart attacks and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt that's what it was. And when she finally had the full blown stroke, she ended up having to have surgery in her head.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it could have stopped from the beginning, which wouldn't cost as much as it is to, treat her in the beginning, I don't think.
Right.
But it seemed like her doctors told us it was insurance companies that kind of put like a little on them where they can't do exactly what they want to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then, so I'm going to say one more thing too. And this thing with the kids learning, I was just saying, like, you got Sesame Street back in the day when I was growing up. And you got different things. Couldn't they start in the beginning with like the medical things with doctors and medical words and terms and the mathematics, like do it in a kid way where they enjoy doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. And just like I said, in the pipeline, the prison, they say that started at third grade.
Right.
And that pipeline, that project 2025 is erasing all our civil rights.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are the things I wanted to add in there. If people start reading more, that's what's happening to us as Black people, that then they'll see, the structure of our government, how it's going.
Right. Right. It's amazing how the technology we have nowadays, if you got a phone, your phone's really a computer. You can look anything up.
Mm-hmm.
So again, you might not know how to spell it, but even Google will help you with with
That's
the
right.
spelling.
I always say just Google, just speak in that phone and Google it
Right,
and let them figure it out.
Because a lot of times we don't know the right questions to even ask. So like if you think your mother's having a stroke, or you think you're having a stroke, you can ask them outright. Do you think it's a stroke? And then why or why not? So maybe there's a reason why they think that, or the answer might be interesting if they say, well, yeah, we think so, but we can't do an MRI because the insurance company. So at least what where the obstacle is. And so there's a game that's out there as far as tests you can order and what the diagnosis is and what the justification for it. And again, that's why it helps to have someone who's advocating for you because I think your doctor probably knows a little bit better about how to maneuver that system, how to code it in such a way that you can get that test covered. Or sometimes if the insurance company denies the procedure, you can do you can request basically a second opinion on that. So you can do an appeal and you can speak to someone. And usually when you do that, they call it a physician to physician conversation. Usually they'll approve it. But it takes a while because that's going to take that will take me like half a morning to get into talking to somebody the insurance company. And if you got 20 people on your schedule that morning, you're not going to have time to do it. But if you got someone who's advocating for you, they'll find time to do it.
Thank you for joining us at the table, caller. We have another caller we would like to go to. Good morning. You at the table.
Good morning to your distinguished guest. Doctor, I don't know his name, but he's a doctor. I have a question to ask you.
Mm-hmm.
I have arthritis really bad in my cervical area, in my neck, in my back.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been treated in the back mostly. Instead of taking pain pills, I went to the invasive therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So I have the injection. So they haven't treated my neck yet, and I use an anesthesiologist.
Mm-hmm.
So lately, I have ringing in my ears.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I wake up every morning. It's like a train is running through my head.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a new primary care doctor, and I'm going to be talking to him today. I'm also going to be reaching out to my pain management doctor because he's the one that wants to do my neck as well.
Mm-hmm.
My question to you is, am I on the right path with that thought? Because I thought it would go away. So when I touch the back of my neck, or if I blow, like, you know how when you get off an airplane,
Mm-hmm.
you want your ears to pop?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't go all day, but when I get up in the morning, it's like a piercing, like you know, it's just real loud when you get up in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just crazy. It's never happened in my life.
Yeah. Let me ask you this: Do you have problems with allergies?
No,
So you no problem with nasal congestion?
none of that.
Okay, that's a big reason why a lot of people have ear congestion or popping ears is because their nose is congested and it's blocking the drainage of their ear. I would definitely make sure that you follow through with that. You know, with that referral for the pain management with your primary care doctor, because when you're dealing with the neck, like you said, you have problems with with the cervical arthritis. You're dealing with nerves that basically that ringing in your ears is your nerve is being irritated somewhere.
Yeah.
So worst case scenario could be like a tumor on the nerve that's causing that ringing. But could be other reasons too. So you should really get checked out.
He told me that my neck is like a slinky. I said, okay. Everybody knows what a slinky looks like. I'm that age group. So I'm like, well, I'm going to be coming back. I just wanted to get your opinion about that. And I did reach out to I did get a great primary doctor at Ascension, and I am very pleased to have this doctor. And there are some great primaries.
Well,
Even though
good,
he's not
good.
African American, I just wanted to let you know that I was very pleased after having my doctor over 40 years.
Uh-huh.
So God bless you.
Well, that's good, and God bless you too. Hey, thank you for calling.
Thank you. Bye bye.
And good luck
Thank
with
you
your
for
neck.
calling. We have one more caller on the line. Good morning. You're at the table.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call. I just want to publicly say this is one of the best shows on the radio right now.
Oh wow! Thank
Wow. Okay.
It's top
Thank
3
you.
for me. So thanks for giving your time and being on the air to share this information with us. My question is in regards to the comment about DEI and affirmative action. I remember in high school, I went to North Division. There was a GE medical program that they had in MPS. And as a high schooler, we were able to go have mentors with occupational therapists or people in white coats during the class or during the school day, so that could be an influence of ours. And my goal was to be a physical therapy, but I went into finance. What can I do due to life? What can I do to influence my now 6-year-old? I know you guys said something about a program about white coats, but to keep knowing that these programs are probably not going to be around in 12 years, and we don't have $1 million in savings to have them take a part of the Harvard programs and things like that. What do you suggest as a young male at 6 years old to try to influence him to be in the medical field? And I'll hang up and listen. Thank you.
I would say the main thing is just kind of foster their curiosity, because that's what's science. See, the problem with science is that we think it's about sitting and looking at books and doing formulas and things like that. Science is really just messing around with what's around your home. I remember I used to love when things broke, because that means I could take it apart and try to fix it.
Sometimes I would take things apart and then try to fix it, try to figure out how it worked.
Yeah. I mean, but that's really what science is. It doesn't have to be this formal biology, chemistry, that kind of stuff. But just, let your kids be curious. Let them spend time out in nature. Um, buy them, when you get Christmas presents or birthday presents, get them things, that might be science related, like, again, a microscope. And you can do a whole lot looking at water under a microscope, from a pond. Making things, Legos and erector sets. I don't think they have erector sets still.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But those kind of things, again, those foster kids' curiosity. I know UWM. I think they still have the science bag, program where they have, I think it's on Fridays, where you can go and hear one of the faculty from UWM talk about something that they're interested in. It may be something like water or talking about, lightning or whatever, but, it's just kind of get them interested in that kind of stuff and kind of foster it.
Dr. Izzard, thank you for that. And, just working with your children is so important at an early age to develop their mind, to really get their curiosity going. So that's key. I want to bring on also, I'm just so glad that we have her in the studio this morning.
Good morning.
Dr. Madui is a surgical oncologist. And when I heard that, I was like, this sister is bad. Okay. But she's a surgical oncologist and a deputy director of the Advancing a Healthier Wisconsin Endowment at the Medical College of Wisconsin. In addition to caring for patients, she enjoys mentoring medical students and residents to build the next generation of healthcare providers. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. And we are just so excited and delighted about what you have to bring to the table this morning. So we're at the table, you all, with a surgeon, okay? And a sister at that.
May I say something to the last caller?
Yes, go right ahead.
So thank you for having me. But I also want to say, as someone who's an alumna of Harvard, don't take Harvard off the table. I think that's part of it. It doesn't cost $1 million.
All right, that's what we need to hear.
I went to Harvard because my father forced me to apply to Harvard, because I said, there's no way, they're not taking me, and I don't want to go. I lived in Texas at the time. So I said, I don't understand why you want me to apply to this place. It's a bunch of rich folk. That's not the kind of doctor I want to be. So I don't want to go. And my father, an African man, was like, well, you're going to apply to Harvard. If I'm paying for these applications, I get to pick one. Yeah. And so he picked Harvard. And I, sneaky 19-year-old, applied to a special program in Harvard that only took 30 people, because I was like, you told me to apply to Harvard. You didn't tell me to apply to the main class. So I'm going to apply because I know I'm not going to get in. And then I did. So I just want to share and offer that, yes, just foster their curiosity. I did not know I wanted to be a doctor when I was your son's age. You said he was 6. When I was 6, I wanted to be a linguist because I read a lot and I was very interested in languages. So I said, I want to become a linguist. And my parents said, okay, here are some books about languages. But I think part of it is not taking things off the list for kids. The whole point of the reason we envy kids, the reason I envy the kids in my life is all of the opportunities that are available to them. So I would just say, don't take Harvard off the list. I'll just make that a plug as a Harvard alumna.
No, I think that's key for you to say that, because a lot of times we feel so intimidated and we feel like they're not going to consider us. And, you were one of those people that shows that it really makes a difference. We just have to take the initiative. And you had a parent that pushed you.
Yes.
And from my understanding, you also have another sibling that's a physician as well.
My younger brother is also a surgeon. He's a plastic surgeon, craniofacial surgeon.
When I heard that, I was like, this is wonderful. And so I like that what you're doing here with Black Men in White Coats Initiative. So can you tell us about that? Because last Saturday you had the event.
Yes, we did.
And I saw all the different, promotions on that. And I saw your interview. I saw the other physicians' interview when they were there showing the kids what to do with surgical things. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. And I want to just take a moment to thank all of our partners. So we at Medical College of Wisconsin, the Advancing a Healthier Wisconsin Endowment, but We had partners from Greater Milwaukee Urban League, NK Fellows, and then MPS's Black and Latino Male Achievement groups who really helped us with sort of formulating the plan, figuring out who to reach out to, and helping to get out to the students. And it's very kind of you to talk about the interviews, but what I was most excited about on those interviews were the kids. Was seeing kids who have not had this exposure, seeing their eyes light up, having them experience, oh, this is what doctors do. And really the important thing of like, oh, this is not that hard. I could see a bunch of kids who were like, oh, this what y'all do? Okay, I can do this. I can figure out how to do this. So this is an option for me. The reason why we held the Black Men and White Coats Youth Summit, which is a movement by Dr. Dale Okorodudu that's been going on since 2013, is in around 2011, 2008 to 2011, there was a recognition that there were fewer Black men in medical school in 2008 and 2011 than there were in 1978. There has been an increase in Black women in medical school. There were barely any Black women in medical school, of course, in 1978. That number has continued to go up. So when we look at the slope, there's still not enough of us. We're only 2.5 or 2.6% of the American physician workforce. So we still need to improve. But when you look at the numbers, when you look at the rate of increase, the number of Black women in medicine is steadily going up. It's not going up as fast as it should be. There are a lot of issues in keeping us in the workforce, and we're working on that. But when we look at the one for Black men, it's actually gone down proportionally or stayed flat. It's been very difficult to improve it. So why does that matter? First of all, it's not there. But second of all, for the people we have data for, Black men have the worst health outcomes in this country.
Yes.
When we look at Wisconsin specifically, if you're a Black person, and I'm just going to say Black person because that's what we have the data for, but just assume that the numbers are worse for Black men. If you're a Black person born in Wisconsin in 2018, there was about a 5 to 6 year difference in your life expectancy compared to a white person. If you were born in Wisconsin in 2020, that increased to about 7 to 8 years difference in life expectancy. How do we improve health outcomes? There's data that shows that Black people and Black men specifically are more likely to get preventative health care. They're more likely to get screenings. They're more likely to do the things their doctors say to do when they're seen by Black physicians. Last year, there was a study that finally looked across the entire country, looked at all of the counties in the country. One of the findings that was not so great was that half of the counties in this country don't have a single Black physician.
Oh, wow.
But when they looked at the counties that did have a Black physician, they saw that just having one Black physician, even if that physician did not interact with all of the patients, all of the Black people in that county, it increased the life expectancy, decreased the mortality for the people in that county. And that as you increase the number of Black physicians in that county, their life expectancy went up. Now, do we understand exactly how that works? No. But that's data from basically the Health and Research Services Administration and the American Academy for Medical Colleges that demonstrates that. And so that's evidence that shows that, okay, these people have the poorest outcomes. Now, to be fair, we are in Wisconsin. There are a lot of Native Americans here, and there is an appalling lack of data about Native Americans and their outcomes as well. There's an appalling lack of data about Latino people and their outcomes as well. And so what I'm saying basically applies to them as well, is when we have more representation in the workforce, the health outcomes are better. That's why.
Wow. And that's one thing with the All of Us Research Program, Doctor, that we really encourage people of color to join our program.
Yes.
Because if we don't have data or information on you, then how can researchers really identify how to help us?
I completely agree. So I love the All of Us Research Program. I am, as you said, I'm a surgical oncologist, which always sounds terrifying, but it just means that I'm a surgeon who focuses on cancer. And one of my areas of research is in basically cancers that affect your gastrointestinal tract. So anywhere that helps you process food, I focus on those kinds of cancers. And one of the wonderful things about being someone who works in the cancer space in the last 10 to 15 years is the number of advances that we've made. It's been remarkable. It's been amazing. There are new drugs, there are new therapies. I'm a surgical oncologist. I do surgeries that did not exist when I started medical school. I use a robot to do surgery that did not exist when I was finishing residency. I didn't know how to do that. We give chemotherapies that did not exist. We do immune therapies that did not exist. My concern, and one of the areas that I focus in my research, is as we're developing all these therapies, as we're developing all these genetically, like part of all of us is about precision medicine, right? That's why it
Yes.
was created by President Obama. Is, we are in an era of precision medicine and precision oncology, which means we want to be able to target the therapies and the cures to each specific person. We are underrepresented in the data. Black people, Asian people, Latino people are very, very underrepresented in the data that we use to make these new cures. So, what happens when we make these new cures and we are celebrating, right? I take care of a lot of people with pancreas cancer. It's one of the areas I focus on. When I first started my work, the 5-year survival for pancreas cancer was about 4%, then it was 8%. And 2 or 3 years ago, we were all celebrating, and this is terrible. We were all celebrating that the 5-year survival was 11%. That's terrible.
Wow.
But we were celebrating because it was double digits. And that is huge, right? Going from 4 to 8 to 11% is huge. And these advances are because of the advances in surgery, in chemotherapy, in radiation, in new medications. But my concern is when we dive down into the data and see who is actually benefiting from that increase in survival. It's not Black people, it's not brown people, because we don't engage in clinical trials, because we don't engage in research for very understandable reasons. And so, one of the things that I'm passionate about, one of the things that we work on at MCW, is trying to get more Black people engaged in clinical trials, trying to get more Black people engaged in the research, so that as we're formulating these new therapies, we make sure that they're therapies that work in us. Now, when I say that, I get a lot of like, but race is not a biological construct, right? So why do we need to be experimented on? If let them experiment on those people, and then when you figured out the therapy, then you can apply it to me. Race is not a biological construct, but there are differences in the distributions of genes, right?
Right.
That affect how we deal with medication, how we interact with medication, how we deal with therapies. The simple example I like to use I'm Nigerian by birth. There are very, very high rates of sickle cell in Nigeria, sickle cell anemia.
Correct.
When you're growing up in Nigeria,
Mhm.
you get tested for sickle trait. So when you're going to school, they test all of us kids. And so everybody knows as a child, if you have sickle cell, you and all of your friends know. Do you have sickle cell? Do you have sickle trait? Or do you not have trait? And as a kid, I had trait. And as a kid, I used to hate that I had trait because it meant I never could make an excuse to get out of school. Because if you were you had sickle cell anemia. If you were a little bit sick, you got to escape from boarding school. You got sent home. They're like, we can't take care of you. Go home. If you don't have sickle trait, the reason why there's a lot of sickle trait is because of malaria. So if you were someone who didn't have trait, you would go, I think I might be coming down with malaria,
Okay.
and they would send you home. But for those of us who had sickle trait, you couldn't escape. If you were a little sick, they're like, you have trait, you're going to be fine.
Yes.
Go to the infirmary, but you're not going home. That, to me, that's a very good illustration of like, we were kids and we understood, right? We're not biologically different, but there's a difference in the distribution of genes that affects how we recover from diseases.
Mhm.
So that is a very small example that demonstrates how, and that is because that is a disease and gene that is increased in people of African descent, right? That applies to cancers. That applies to heart disease. That applies to a lot of other things. We need to be involved in this research so that people can figure out, as we're coming up with all of these really wonderful new therapies, they may not work the same way in us. And we need to know that, and not know that after these new therapies have been developed after they've been spread into the world. And then we find out 10 years later, oh, wait, you have to make these adjustments for them to work in Black people. You have to make these adjustments for them to work in Native Americans. You have to make these adjustments for them to work in Hispanic people. That keeps us perpetually behind.
That's really key. And, when President Obama started the All of Us research program, he was looking at the importance of precision medicine
Yes.
because we weren't, I would say, at the table.
Yep.
We were not at the table in involvement with research, with our healthcare. Physicians just really didn't understand what it took for us in a sense. But also, there's so much that goes on with African Americans with our health. Like you mentioned that, with us, it's a lot more complicated in a sense. And why is it so complicated? Because the studies weren't really there for us at the beginning, doctor?
No, because, well, the studies weren't there for anyone who's not a white man. When I teach my students, I ask them to imagine when I say an average patient, what does that mean? When I was being taught, an average patient meant a 70-kilogram white man. That was what most therapies were based on. That's what most research was based on, much less. So women as a whole were just excluded, much less African Americans, people of African descent. We were not included in research. And there are, again, differences. Aside from genetic issues, there are differences in how we interact with the healthcare system. That is just a reality, right? When I talk to the other doctors in my life and the way that I explain it to them, this is not my area of practice, but because of my work with AHW, we fund a lot of work in maternal health. And I tell people, and I say, I'm very well educated. I have 4 degrees.
And what are those degrees, doctor?
I have a Bachelor of Science from University of Texas at Dallas, an MD from Harvard, a Master's of Medical Science from Harvard, and a Master's of Public Health from University of North Carolina.
Wow.
If I were to get pregnant in Milwaukee, I have the worst maternal outcomes, and my child has the worst infant mortality in this country compared to a white woman who lives in Appalachia, who does not have my education, who did not graduate from high school. That is just a fact.
And why is that, doctor?
It is a mix of the health system, and it is a mix of our health status. And so I say that to people, to physicians, because they say, well, maybe it's about the patients. And I say, okay, you agree that you and I are the same, aside from this. Our health system just does not treat me the same. It doesn't.
Correct.
And so when I say that, a lot of people try to argue, and I'm like, no, look it up, come back and talk to me. And they look it up and they're like, oh my God, that's true. And I'm like, yeah. So if for me, the danger is that high, if for my child, the danger is that high, what is it for a Black woman who didn't finish high school? What is it for a Black woman who works? Like, I have a great job, right? If I need to take a day off, I don't want to cancel all my patients, but if something happens, I can take a day off.
Mm-hmm.
What happens when you have the intersection of what it means to really work in the world today? You can't really take a day off to take care of yourself. You can't take a day off to take care of your kid. How does that interact with our health? There are multiple different things. So we have to attack it on multiple different levels. We have to work with the health systems, but we also have to advocate for ourselves. And so there's a lot of work being done on the health systems. Part of what I'm interested in, part of what I'm focused on is us working on ourselves. So Black men in white coats is one of those, because we just need to have more of us in medicine. And this is a way, is getting kids invested earlier. I also do research that's focused on empowering Black people with pancreas cancer to get engaged in clinical trials, to not, we shouldn't wait for the doctors to offer us clinical trials. We should be able to talk to the doctors and say, hey, I have this disease. Are there clinical trials available for me? Instead of waiting. That's part of what we need to make sure patients know.
Thank you. This is Karen Dotson. You're at the table today, and you have been hearing and listening to Dr. Madugwe.
Madugwe. Yep.
Okay. I'm trying to say it.
It's good. That was good.
Just trying to remember it now is the key.
Good. That was
but
good.
You are joining us at the you're sitting at the table with the All of Us Research Program, and you're with WNOV 860 AM and 106.5 FM, and we're having good conversation. And so we invite you to call in at 414-444-5250. You can call and join us, and we'll be back on the other side.
We're in this love together, and like berries on the vine, it gets sweeter.
At the table, this is Karen Dotson from the All of Us Research Program at the Medical College of Wisconsin. I have Dr. Madhu. I can't say it hardly again. Can you say?
Bujimadokwe.
I love it. And so I'm going to learn this because, and I want for you all to learn her name too, because this is really important, the work that she's doing and how she's involved at the medical college and her role that she actually plays with advancing healthier Wisconsin. She is a oncologist, a surgical oncologist. And that takes a lot of work, doesn't it, doctor?
It does. Takes a little bit of time to train.
It does. And something during break you mentioned that I want to make sure you mention it to the audience today.
Sure. So we were talking about cancer in this country, one of my areas of focus. And I mentioned that when I moved here from North Carolina, and I was getting data together for grants and looking it up. And it turned out that Black people in Wisconsin have the highest rates of cancer incidence and mortality in the country, amongst all the Black people in the country. And I read that and I was like, that can't be right. There are not that many Black people in Wisconsin compared to the rest of the country, right? But that is correct. In the paper, it actually even said yes. In the paper, you could tell somebody had asked them and they're like, yes. Compared to Illinois, Mississippi, DC, Black people in Wisconsin have the highest rates of cancer and the poorest cancer mortality rates in the country. So that's why this work is very, very important. It is multifactorial, but I think part of the message I want to make sure that we all have is there are things that we can do about it. I think that we all get healthier when we take power from the healthcare system.
Correct. Yes.
When we take responsibility and think about the things that we can change in our health. So I want everybody who's listening to this, if you are 45 and older, I need you to go have your colonoscopy.
All right.
Okay.
I know it's not so. Sometimes it's not that much fun to get there, right?
It is not at all fun. It's not fun. I need you to go have your colonoscopy. If you are a woman and you are 40 and above of average risk, you need to go have your mammogram. That's just the facts. None of these things are fun, but that's part of how we can start involving ourselves in decreasing our risks for cancer. When you look at the data around across the country, if you look at the data, there's a black-white mortality rate difference from cancers. And you can actually see on the graphs when mammography started going wide in the 80s and 90s and when colonoscopies for colon cancer started going wide, the black-white mortality rate from those cancers actually increased.
Wow.
Because there was an access issue. Everyone's cure rate got better. Everyone's mortality rate got better. But Black patients did not get better as quickly. And so the gap widened. And one of the reasons we think the gap widened is because we added this new technology. I'm a surgical oncologist, so I don't really think of a mammogram as technology, right? I operate with robots. I'm like, a mammogram is just an x-ray. Yes, it is, but it is technology. It is a barrier because you have to go to the doctor. You have to get this test. You have to wait for the results. It's very anxiety inducing. You have to do all of these things. My mom is one of those people where I'm like, okay, mom, let's go get your thing. She's like, you people always find something. Doctors always find something. I don't want to go.
So,
I'm fine.
that's really key. So a lot of times people feel like they don't want to hear the bad news.
Yes.
So
My own mother.
your own mother.
My own mother is like, I don't need to go because y'all will find something.
With two children that are physicians.
Two children physician. My older sister is a nurse.
All right.
And my mom will be like, I don't want to go. I don't want to go because you will find something.
But
right?
the key is if they find something
Exactly
before it gets to be a problem that you realize it can be taken care of a lot easier.
Exactly. Is we don't want to hear the news, so we bury our heads in the sand. The health system does not take, like, yes, we receive not the same level of care. That is true. But part of it is we have to take responsibility and grasp onto the things that are within our control. And that is get your colonoscopy if you're 45, not 50, 45. Get your mammogram if you're 40 and above. If you have risk factors, if you have a family history, those things need to be done earlier. Those are two very clear things that we know can help reduce your risk or at least help treat something if we find it early.
So that's key, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
We have another caller on the line, and actually it's Dr. Jeff Whittle. Dr. Jeff Whittle is an internal medicine physician in Milwaukee with over 38 years of experience in the medical field. He is currently an internal medicine physician at Veterans Affairs, professor of medicine at the Medical College of Wisconsin, and co-principal investigator for the All of Us Research Program. Good morning, Dr. Whittle.
Good morning to you.
It's just a joy to have you on the line, and you're hearing about the importance of research with cancer. You're hearing about the research as far as with African Americans. And can you speak to what the All of Us Research Program is really looking at in that area as well?
Well, I think one of the things that we've realized is that the research that's done by researchers of color oftentimes is more reflective of the needs of that community than research that's driven by people from the majority population, like myself, 65-year-old white male. So I think it's really good that we are making that emphasis. Things that they're doing are having training at some of the historically Black colleges and universities. They are trying to reach out to diverse populations to have those people use the All of Us research data. It's difficult because the places where a lot of that research is done are not as diverse as maybe they should be, and we're certainly working to try to correct that. But that's been a very slow process, and folks like our other caller are wonderful, but in short supply. So anything we can do to help, and this means starting at young ages. People in high school need to say, I can be a researcher someday. And this is something that all of us is trying to encourage by working with community groups that are interested in that.
When we start looking at different types of research that's going on for African Americans, people of color, the brown and black communities, what are some of those things that they're looking at this time? Can you give us some examples?
Sure. So if you go to the All of Us researcher workbench and look up and see what's being done, you see that African American researchers sometimes are looking at things that wouldn't necessarily be brought up by other groups. So they're looking at the combination of hypertension and type 2 diabetes and how that leads to increases in cardiovascular disease. And certainly those diseases affect all populations, but the black community is much more affected by both hypertension and type 2 diabetes than the white community, for example. So this is a place where looking at those two together is something that's being driven by African American researchers. Similarly, our other caller was talking about the importance of mammography and colorectal cancer screening, where these are conditions that are more mortal, in other words, more likely to cause death if they happen, and at least as common in the case of breast cancer and more common in the case of colorectal cancer in men, yet the screening rates are lower. So I think it's the case where the African American community is disproportionately affected, and both research and the kind of straightforward advice like was just provided is really essential.
Dr. Whittle, we've been getting calls in where people were just wanting to know, like, what's really been happening with some of the historical Black colleges and universities. And so we took that very serious from our last week. And I think I had another call on that before. And that's why I wanted to make sure that we brought you in, because you are the principal investigator, one of them at least, for our All of Us research program here at the Medical College of Wisconsin. And you know the challenges that people of color are having as far as being a part of research, from both standpoints, from being a participant in the program to being a researcher in the program. Can you speak to that?
So I think in terms of being a participant, certainly any research that's conducted is faced with the legacy of racism in research. And people are all familiar with Henrietta Lacks and with the ski experiment. But people who read through the literature more completely can find many, many examples going back hundreds of years to where the African American population was not treated well in research. So it's one of the things that's incumbent upon us as that are leading the All of Us research program is to make sure it's very transparent and that there's oversight by members of minority communities, and that oversight is clear and credible for people who are considering joining. And I hope we've achieved that, but I think there are still people with who still are suspicious, and justifiably so. And that's just something that we have to continue to work on over time. In terms of the research, I think that reaching out to specific colleges that have said, yes, we'd like to partner with All of Us research program is one approach, and that's in place. There's 6 of the historically Black colleges and universities that are doing research. And these are oftentimes smaller institutions who have an important mission to provide higher education primarily to people of color. And they have not had research as prominent of a mission as, say Harvard or the Medical College of Wisconsin. And so I think that we have tried to provide resources for them so that somebody who's a researcher at one of those institutions is not out there all by themselves trying to figure out how to do this, but they're working in partnership some of the groups that have had more experience, so that which is the same thing as anybody else would do that wanted to become a researcher and went to those institutions. You don't just show up at Harvard and then start doing research because you're at Harvard. You show up at Harvard and you form partnerships, and then you learn how to do it. And what we are hoping is that somebody who is going to North Carolina Central University or Howard University gets that same benefit of partnering with expert researchers, and then can develop that expertise themselves. And then the next person at those institutions will have somebody in their own institution who can provide that guidance. That is a many step process that is taking longer than anybody wants, but I'm glad that we are contributing to it.
And Dr. Whittle, I really appreciate your involvement in the community. Even though you are a white male man, you still will go in, and I've seen you go in with me in different communities and churches to talk about health-related issues and also the importance of research. And I just wanted to let people know that you do get, some individuals that are not African American or Black or Latino that has worked with the population that we're talking about today and understands the importance of getting that good communication. And, and I look at also your involvement at the Veterans Affairs and what you have done with that population and how you have worked with them in certain settings. And can you speak to that?
Well, I'm fortunate to come from a family where many people have served. My uncle was buried in Europe where his bomber crashed during World War II. But it is not something that I was able to do and really chose not to do because I was going straight to medical school. And I have the greatest respect for the people who have taken years out of their lives to serve the country. And so it's a privilege to be working with a veteran population. And the VA and the military has come up fair amount of way since the 70s and Vietnam era to equality for the folks who were African American in the military. Although I talk to people who just got out, who face a lot of racism while they're in there. So it's not by any means a completed task, but it is a chance to serve a pretty diverse community when I work in the VA. The VA has the Million Veterans Program, which is similar to the All of Us research program, although we don't get nearly the spectrum of data that the All of Us research does. But there are 120,000 African American veterans who have joined that study and who are part of the Million Veterans. And that's the largest number of people who have genetic information that there is in the world. And it turns out that by linking that to information about kidney disease, they've made very important contributions to understanding why there is so much more African American people on dialysis than white people than you would expect based on their portion of the population.
Dr. Whittle, that's interesting that you mentioned that because I always feel that when I started seeing all these kidney dialysis, I would say buildings or institutions being placed in our community, I was like, what's really going on? Why is it that we see so many of these services in our community, providers in that area? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so I think there's the genetic finding that I've mentioned that MVP, Million Veterans Program, and actually all of us have contributed to understanding is a genetic predisposition that's related to a gene that was a good thing if you were at high risk of dying of sleeping sickness, which is a parasite-borne disease that's common in Central and Western Africa. And that gene turns out to have negative effects on your body's ability to tolerate hypertension. and subsequently the development of end-stage renal disease from that. So that explains a fair amount of the disparity in in end-stage renal disease due to hypertension. However, there is also a disparity in the number of African Americans who are on dialysis because of diabetes. It's not as clear that that has an explanation in biology. That may be more a matter of access to care and just inadequate care for people of color. Clearly, there's been disparities in healthcare for many years, and they continue. And diabetes is a disease that causes kidney failure after being present for many years and usually not well treated. So I think that that's a place where we can take the mistake and say, oh, this is genetics. Now we understand African Americans get good care. It's just there's a genetic predisposition. That is not at all the case. There is a contribution from genetics, but is much more incumbent that we find out ways to ensure that everybody has access to care and that care is of equal quality.
You know, I like what you mentioned as it relates to that major issue there, because we've had conversations at the table here where we talked about diabetes, where we talked about high blood pressure as it relates to our population, African American population. And so by you mentioning those things, then we understand why are some of the challenges that people might have with their kidneys. And so what can people do to be a little bit more proactive with that, Dr. Whittle?
Yeah. So I think clearly it's a disease. Both of those are diseases where most of the treatment happens in the home. So people come and see me with high blood pressure, maybe 3-4 times a year, and I adjust their medications, suggest for physical activity, changes in diet. And those are things that take me, 20 minutes to explain and understand. But going home and doing that real work is something that the patient has to decide to do. And oftentimes members of the family are key to that. So that's an important thing to know. And there's a certain amount of community responsibility to say, well, if we're going to tell people should be out walking, then we need to make sure their neighborhood is safe. We need to make sure if people are supposed to be eating fruits and vegetables, that there is grocery stores in the neighborhood that sell that, and you're not having to go to a convenience store and buy something that's in a bag. So I think that it's a multifactorial thing. Some of it is personal responsibility, but I think that it's much easier to be eating a healthy diet, being physically active, if you live in a neighborhood like where I live in Shorewood, than if you're in a neighborhood that's distressed, like some of the neighborhoods in 53206. So it's really not just a personal responsibility, it's a societal responsibility to address some of these disparities in social determinants of health.
And that's one of the challenges that we have been having some issues with. And there's many programs, and I know the medical college, we've been also having conversations with the community on some of those related issues as it relates to the environment where people live and the challenges that we have. But even though, Dr. Whittle, because we have a lot of our listeners that are living in some of the challenging areas, with the limited resources, what do you suggest for them?
Yeah, no, I think that the treatments for hypertension in particular are cheap. So $4 a month drugs from Walmart are perfectly capable of controlling high blood pressure in most people. I think that's still maybe a reach for people, but it's within reach for most. And I think that's an important thing to say, okay, things may be difficult for me, but I can take care of myself. I can take my medicines. I can use the blood pressure cuff that I either can get from many health systems. Certainly the VA can give them away for free. And many insurance or providers will give you a blood pressure cuff. And if failing that, they're less than $50. So I think that monitoring your own blood pressure, realizing that treating your blood pressure is an everyday thing. It's not dependent upon how you feel. Having a headache doesn't mean, oh, my pressure's up today, I better take my medicine. It's a case where you take your medicine every day, just like any other thing that you have to do. Like brush your teeth, take your blood pressure medicine. Diabetes is a more complicated situation. The management is challenging. And I think that taking the medicines by itself is oftentimes not enough, although it's a big, big part. And this is a case where saying, okay, I've got to look at my level of physical activity, and I have to look at the quality of food I eat and take personal responsibility.
This is Karen Dotson. Dr. Whittle, we want to thank you for joining us at the table. We've had some wonderful conversations today to talk about the importance of looking at healthcare providers and looking at why it's so important for African Americans, brown and black people to be involved in research and what you can do to take control over your life. Dr. Whittle, we thank you for joining us today. This is Karen Dotson from the All of Us Research Program.
And this is Sequanda Gilbert Crampton from the All of Us Research Program.
We thank you for coming and sitting at the table with us to have great conversation. We had so many great callers calling in, and we thank you for listening. And we're also hoping that you learned something today while we were sitting at the table. We want to just remind you that you can call us at
414-955-2689.
Can you say that one more time, Taquanda?
It is 414-955-2689.
And we will talk to you soon, and just make it a great day.
Thanks a lot, Karen. Thanks, so romantic. We got the whole thing working out so right.